I don't know if you guys can hear this. Can you hear her? Yeah, well, you know what happened? This is my second time doing this project. Stop. I had done the piece and everything was finished. And Joe called me down for lunch. So I turned everything off and left the painting on the table because when we have lunch, she's going to knock my camera over. When we have lunch, she's always downstairs with us. So we had our lunch and did our thing, came back upstairs. I see my Stay Wet palette upside down on top of the painting and paw prints everywhere. Dried. So this is take 2. She's in one of her moods. I keep poking her. Hopefully she'll get pissed off and she'll leave, but she doesn't. So I'm going to try to work around her for the non-important stuff. Well, supplies are important, right? I am so discouraged right now. I was so in love with that piece. Stop it. But you know what? This gave me an opportunity, because I mean, you guys probably go through this too, right? You create a piece of art, something happens. I should have another camera filming her what she's doing right now. So I decided I had done it on a canvas, a 6x6 canvas. I thought, you know what? I had done it with the little puppy, the puppy image transfer piece as a collage, as like a different method. And so when she ruined that one, I thought, no, I'm going to do something else. So I'm going to do this. Masonite. We all have access to Masonite. You buy picture frames. Usually there's Masonite or cardboard that you can use. The same line drawing. Then I found this little puppy on Pixabay. Go to Pixabay, pick any picture. But print them out either 3.5 by 5 or wallet size, something smaller. I'm going to show you a different way how to do the image transfer because I already covered the painting study of the eye and all that stuff. But I want to show you a different way of doing this. We can get an eye reflection without having to do an image transfer. Because the image transfer that I did with the painting, it was hard because now it's cold outside. There's the furnace is on, so I'm going to do it differently. That way you'll have another option. So with the supplies, again for take 2, DecoArt Traditions acrylics, Hansa Yellow Light, Phthalo Green Blue, Phthalo Blue, Ultramarine Blue, Transparent Red Iron Oxide, Burnt Sienna, Titanium White, Extender and Blending Medium, which I'm probably going to need it now because the furnace is on, DecoArt Media White Gesso, and Matte Medium. Yeah, so Joe said, you should have got your face on camera. Boy, oh boy. Because I screamed. And you know what? It's my fault because I know she's always jumping on my table because she likes to go after my brushes. But where the palette is, you can see on the table here, she jumps from this side and she went like this. The paint stuck to her paw. It went over and then right on the canvas. So I made up another palette. So I've got my little piece of Masonite here. And this is, let's see, it's 3.5 by 5. So it's a standard size. And that's one of the things, I don't do a lot of pieces on Masonite. I don't know why, but this is the Masonite. You can buy these sheets at the big box stores, Home Depot, Lowe's, and use the flat one. Don't get the one that's shiny, the flat one. They will cut it for you. Now where I go, because I buy so much, the guys usually they'll usually cut it for me where it'll fit in the car. Like the big massive sheets won't fit in the car, so they'll do the cuts for free. And then then you can so get the 11 by 14, 16 by. This is a bit thin for 16 by 20. It might work, but these are perfect. So I'm going to use Aqualon brushes for the actual gesso and medium, and then I'm going to use my Majestics for all the detail work. So I've got a 1-inch wash, a number 12 shader. I've got a filbert, some rounds, and some liners. And then for the varnishing at the end is my beautiful 1-inch oval wash. So I'm going to go into some gesso, and I'm just going to put a coat on here. And this is just so the paint doesn't go right into the Masonite. The paint will have something to stick to. I've painted directly on this type of Masonite. It's fine. But it's nice having that extra layer of gesso just as protection as well. And you may say, well, what if I don't have gesso? Then use white paint. If you're into any type of art, you should have gesso. Especially if you're doing this stuff as a gift or to sell, you want to make sure that the piece doesn't start falling apart paint starts to peel and stuff like that. Okay, so I'm getting a little bit of texture here. And you can work this on canvas if you want. You don't have to do it the way I am. So I'm going to let that dry. And then while that's drying, so what I did, so I've got this little frame. And it fell on the floor. So I sized everything, basically taking the photograph. It was on the Masonite, the photograph, and then the line drawing. This is how I was just trying to come up with a different idea to do this. So I'm looking at doing something like that. So this is all going to be black. This is going to be a beautiful turquoise blue. And then this is going to be black, but it's going to be transparent so we can see the puppy. How are we going to do it instead of an image transfer? We're going to collage this piece of this photograph directly to the Masonite. Then we're going to paint right on top of the photograph. Isn't that cool? So, and I made my line here. So this has to go, when I'm actually mounting it, it has to go to the bottom left so it fits right in there. So I'm going to get my heat gun and I'm going to speed up the drying time. If you don't have matte medium, you can use decoupage medium. That's fine as well. Don't worry about that. And for the line drawing, the best way is to use the lineless grid system, and you can use the smaller grids if you want to reduce it to a smaller size. Use the larger grids if you want it to the larger size. So you just put your line drawing in the acetate piece and choose the size of the grid. So larger grid, you get a larger size. Smaller grid, you get a smaller size, and you just copy what's inside. Okay? And there's a video that comes with the grid, so I'm not going to waste your time explaining it. All right, so I'm going to dry this now. I want to show you guys something. What do you see here? It's a paw print. Hers. She's right here. I don't know if you can see her. I don't know if you can see her. She's right there. She knows she's in trouble. All right, so I'm going to take this now right at the bottom edge. And just on plain paper. You don't have to do anything fancy. And I'm going to put the matte medium all on this side. And you can use decoupage medium will work. You gotta make sure that the paper will curl. I should have sprayed it first. So you never have it where you've done your piece, something goes terribly wrong where you can't recover, and then it kind of messes up your entire day. Yeah, that's because this painting, the first take of the painting, the 6x6 canvas, it took an hour and a half. Not including drying time. So that was quite disappointing, but you know what? It was my own fault. And paper too, if you find that your paper is always curling, you know what you can do? Just put your matte medium on there to stiffen it up before you put it on your board. So bottom left, right at the bottom left. There. Beauty. And then matte medium over it again. Yeah, I see you watching my brush. Yeah, I see you. Now, the one thing is with the acrylics, they're not toxic, but you know, it's not good for the animals to be licking their paws. I had to fight with her to clean her paws. I used 1000+ stain remover, also known as Winning Colors, to do that. When I was, oh God, this is going back quite a few years, working with oils, M. Graham oils. Their base is walnut oil, and I don't know what it was with it. Harley liked the smell, big time. I don't know why. Luckily, again, they're not, the oils I was using were not toxic, but not good for you. It's like drinking a bottle of olive oil. Yeah, so if you've got pets, you got to be so careful. So I'm putting matte medium going across, going up and down, really keeping it as a light touch. I love collaging on Masonite because it doesn't warp. Getting rid of any bumps and lumps. Alrighty, that brush is going to go in there. And I'm going to dry that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that line drawing and I'm going to lightly transfer it. Okay, using the same method I do with the regular, with the lineless grid system, but I'm going to be using white charcoal instead. All right, so I transferred the line drawing. It was half charcoal, half white, because I put the white on there, but it was already the charcoal from the first time. So and I was just using the General's charcoal white, and then for the first one was the Pit charcoal. It was the soft charcoal from Faber-Castell. So this is where now all we're going to do is paint the eye on top of this. So because this here, I want to make this a turquoise color. If let's say I wanted to make the eye red, then I would base this with a light layer of white so the green doesn't tone down the red. But because I'm working with turquoise, like a turquoisey color, these colors will work out fine. And I'm going to go with my, see what is this, little number 6 round brush. Doesn't really matter the size as long as it works for you. So I want to start getting a base in there. I'm going to start with ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. And what are we making with this? Chromatic black. And let me grab a little bit of extender and blending medium just to thin it down ever so slightly. If we make something too opaque versus something very thin, we may get a ridge of paint where the colors meet. So what we're doing right off the bat, we're going to be doing a glaze over everything. So with the chromatic black, you want to make sure, see that ridge of paint there? I'm going to make sure I don't have that. And ideally, if you don't lose your lines, that's even better. And you can choose to do this with a flat brush if you want. I'm going to be using my round brush because I can get some first strokes started. That's completely up to you. See? And I put another line in there just to give an idea where the second layer of highlights are starting. Now the frame that I'm using has a 1/4 inch gap on both sides. So the line that I put here, that's where the actual frame is covering. So I'm okay. I don't have to worry about that. Because the frame is also going to cover that as well. I cut the photograph a little short. All right, so it took me about 4 layers of paint. I was, again, going from the outside, working in, then feathering them out. So it's pretty dark, you can see. And also I didn't cover, missed a spot here. I didn't cover much here because there's going to be some highlights there. And the look I'm going for is almost to be the same color as the frame. That's what I'm going for. So it'll be like that, okay? Alrighty, so now let's detail the eye. Now I'm going to go to, what am I going to use for a brush? I'm going to stick with that small one. No, well, no. I'm going to go to another one that's clean because I need to use transparent colors inside. So I'm going for a turquoise. You can make this any color you want. Ooh, I love that. Holy moly. Love that. Let me get some white in there so you can see a true underlying color. That's gorgeous. All right. Let's see if I can swing this. So I'm going to, because I don't want all the opacity in there, transparency, I'm going to add a little bit of white to this. And ooh, that's really dark. Let me get a bit more white in there. I'm going to put a little bit of blending medium. You can use water too. It's too opaque. And it's not to show the background through it. What I want to do is it's for the modeling. It's for the modeling. we go. So it's just semi-transparent around the pupil. And then more opaque on the outside. I'm going to cover that up there. You can even take one of the painting studies, like the single eye study, the double eye study, and just work with that. You don't have to do something new. Okay. And this is going to take a couple of layers because I want to build this. I want to keep it a little bit transparent on the outside here. Chaos finally left. So from the pupil outwards, I'm going to paint these lines like this just to get that modeling. And here, a bit of pity pads in there. Some of that background will show through. Again, it's going to take a couple of layers for this. Just don't use too much paint, because you want some of the areas to be transparent, some of them to be opaque. But the pouncing up and down is a great way to get the modeling for the eyes. It's, you know, where the striations are and all that stuff. Okay, I'm going to dry this. I'm going to put a little bit more green in that. There. I didn't add any additional white. You could even have torn the paper around the puppy, but I didn't want that edge where the paper was. That's just me. A bit more green. Adding a bit more green makes it a bit more transparent. Bit of blending medium in there. This is drying very, very fast because of the furnace is on. Going to the opaque one. Come down here. This is actually not too bad. I think I want to get it a little bit, like the more transparent layers you add, the darker this becomes. So eventually you can hide everything. I just controlling it with the blending medium. Let me make a little bit more of the turquoise, phthalo blue, ultramarine blue. Again, like I said, you can make it any color you want. Just if you're going to use a green background, if you want to make it red, keeping in mind red and green are opposite in the color wheel, and even optical color mixing is going to neutralize. So I'm going to go with a bit of white. A little bit lighter than that, because this is going to have to be highlighted anyways. Right in here. We're going to make a lighter area. Just get a bit more blending medium just to blend that out. Oops. Pat on a paper towel. Just feathering that out a little bit. See how fast that dried? That line is already dry. So I'm just going to put a little bit more paint in there. There we go. See, just dry brushing. Again, like say that this is a little bit rough on the brush, creating this modeling effect. Isn't that gorgeous? You can see how now it's just I mean, you can still see that there's a dog there, but when it dries, you know, acrylics dry a little bit darker. So before making a major adjustment on the paint, wait for it to dry. And this, watch how fast it's going to dry. Water spot there. That's not too bad. So I'm going to leave that for now. And let's do the pupil. So black, we're going to use chromatic black. But I want to make the black a little bit more on the purple side. So ultramarine blue, staying away from this stuff, and transparent red iron oxide. I was even thinking about going to alizarin crimson. Let's see what the kind of black that's going to make. And remember to always wipe your ferrule. Because I'm working so quickly, so I swish, swish, swish my brush into the bucket, and I don't wipe the edge of the paint. Blending medium, again, you can use water. I don't wipe the edge of the brush, not the paint. Oh my God, that's actually not too bad. So I'm going to paint the pupil. And it's going to, again, we're going to do the same layers as before. So you're going to paint it once, let it dry, paint it again. So you can see that where, so instead of doing the collage, you could have done the image transfer, and the image transfer is fine. This is a little bit more refined. So how, I want that definitely a little bit darker. So I'm going to dry that, and we'll go in with another layer, I think. I'm going to go with a filbert brush. Let me see if I can do it with this one. I've got a bit of a kink on the end of the brush. Oh, let me tell you something. So you saw how I dried this, right? Wait for it to come to room temperature before you paint on it right away, because the minute you put the paint on there, it's going to dry instantly. Not giving you any working time. Like it did right here. See? That's really, it was really hot. Which is no big deal because I still want to make this even darker. This is going to be almost black. I wonder if I can smush that around. There we go. You can get blue into there. Try not to get the black into the eye, because the blue is going to be harder to, it's harder to clean up black than it is to clean up blue. I'm going to go to a filbert brush. Oh, much easier. There we go. There we are. Okay, I'm going to dry that. So I applied another layer of black. Now I had to time this to make sure I could do this. So I applied another layer of black, baby white before it dried. And then I'm just going to touch a little bit into the pupil so I can see the reflection. And do this as much as you want. You can even use a Q-tip dipped in a little bit of water. There we go. Look at that. How is that? I'm liking that. And if you happen to wipe off too much, you can always add another layer of black on top. Just make sure this is done wet on wet. There we go. All right. So let's dry that. Oops. Wait, hang on a second. What's that there? A piece of dried paint there. I want to protect that, another layer of protection. So I'm going to add a layer of matte medium to this as a barrier layer. Silly me, I'm going to do that with my little brush. I'm going to get my big filbert brush. Okay, matte medium over everything. Just a layer of protection. The more transparent layers in between transparent paint layers, your painting is a little bit more luminescent because more light shines through. It also adds another layer of protection because there's collage on there, and although we did seal it, just another layer doesn't hurt. Okay, so I'm going to let that dry, and then when we come back, we're going to detail the outside of the eye, and we're going to start building in the details of the fur. And I just realized there's little bubbles here. It's where the heat gun got a little bit hot. Keep that in mind when you're doing that. Okay, ultramarine blue, burnt sienna. More on the ultramarine blue. Really get that to a fine point. Speck of water. And now we're going to outline the eye. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. This piece is getting darker and darker and darker now. And when I make this line like this, I'm not going to leave that like that. I'll take my brush and I'll just feather that out. Although it is transparent, you still don't want to see a hard line like that. So we'll feather that out and see if I can show you this way. Okay, so you see what I'm doing? I wasn't able to see what I was doing. And same thing on the bottom. Let's get that in there. I'm being very quiet when doing this because I have to concentrate. Getting black, like I just did there, getting black in there is going to be harder to clean with, harder to cover up with the turquoise because the turquoise is transparent. And hopefully my head's not in the way. Oh, good Lord. She's starting up again. There we go. Okay. This isn't quite dark enough. So I'm gonna leave it be for now. And I'm going to take that same chromatic black and I'm going to strengthen around the pupil. Be very careful when you're doing this. This is where things can go wrong if you go too fast. And if you're like me, because you're cheap on paint. A little water. Hopefully you can see. Glare. Now just soften that edge a little bit. There we go, just like that. Beauty. Now you can see where I put that in there. See? That's why it's important that you make those strokes and feather them out. We're going to be covering that up with white anyways, with some white detail. Okay. Take some, while everything else is drying, some phthalo blue. Let's get a little bit of phthalo green in there. And where did it go? Some blending medium. I'm going to blot the brush. very, very transparent layer. Just want to darken it a little bit. Because this is transparent, we're still going to see all that detail, all the modeling underneath. And the matte medium really helps the paint grab. See, now as we're getting darker and darker and darker, I can take a little bit more of the blue, get a little bit of water in there. Gotta make sure I don't go too far over into the black, although it's easy enough to correct at this stage because we still have to add the fur. Or not the fur, yeah, the fur. Blech. So transparent, transparent, transparent. I'm going to fade that out a bit. I want this part to be lighter on the bottom. I'll be adding some yellow. Go with a little bit more green even. Well, let me dry this. Always dry it first before making an adjustment with color. And I should be adding matte medium in between the layers so it builds more depth. So, like that. And I can see a line there where the black didn't quite match up in there. A little bit of a harsh line in there. I'm just going to soften that a little bit. There we go. Okay. So the filbert that I was using was what was this? Number, oh, I can't even see. Number 8. Number 8 filbert. I'm going to grab some Hansa Yellow Light. A little bit of that blending medium. It's a little bit, well, it's up to you how yellow. It's a bit too yellow for me. The good thing is that because it's lighter, I can always glaze over it. There we go. Take some of that blue. I don't want to paint it flat because I want that modeling inside. Those striations. Okay, nice. And we have to go to the bottom. Make sure you go right to the bottom. We're going to be adding a black line there with a white, the broken white line. For where the eye looks wet. So see, just do it in layers and layers and layers and layers. And let each layer dry before you want to make it darker. Okay, I'm going to dry that. I don't know if maybe it doesn't look so bright on camera, but it looks, in my monitor it looks dark, but when I look at the actual camera monitor, it looks pretty good. I could make this like a glaze of blue as well if I wanted to. Like that. So it's not black and white. So you can do that as well. I like that. I'm going to do that right over the whole pupil. Doing this with carbon black would be very difficult because it's opaque. There we go. I like that. I wasn't thrilled with the black and white. And although this is more of a fun project, realistically the highlight would be white, but we're still going to add highlights, the white glimmer highlights to this. All right, let's get into some fur detail. Let's see if I can do this with the filbert. So you take your chromatic black, whatever you have left, and we're going to add some white to it. We don't have enough, so I'm going to take blue. Let's go with a little bit of transparent red iron oxide instead. Is that going to be enough? Not probably. Well, let's try it first. And let's start from the outside just to get the strokes going. It's very dry. The brush is too big. The brush is too big for what I want to do. All right, we'll go back to the round brush. Feather that out. I really one of these days should show you what a comb and a rake brush will do. The one thing is what I don't like about showing about those brushes, that because they work so well, people think they're the magic brush, that you tend to rely on the brush instead of relying on manipulating the brush to create those strokes. Because those brushes are not cheap. There's a big lump there. That's where the heat gun made it bubble. Those brushes aren't cheap. So it's, you know, it's always better. Just use the standard brushes, and then you can still get the, well, you get something similar. You're not going to get the exact same effect. I just went to a smaller brush. Here we go. I'm just getting that started. There we are. Take it nice and slow, just getting that in there. And this is very hard to see, I'm sorry, because it's so black. And this is where we're typically say the bigger the brush, the better. Yeah, for the underpainting, we're working detail now. And whatever you do, if you're in a groove and something's working, like right now, these strokes are working, and I hope to God Joe doesn't come home right now with Mia, because she'll come bombing upstairs into the studio and bang my leg. If something's working, like let's say you've got the right amount of water in your brush and all that other stuff, oh, put it, just if you hear somebody saying, please don't bother me because I'm have mojo, my things are working, so try not to bother me, please. Then of course I want to come in the room and see what's going on. Oh God, I hope you can see this. So a value that's just a little bit lighter, and then we'll go something a little bit lighter, then something a little bit lighter, and something a little bit lighter, and we're going to build up the detail that way. Because then that way, if you happen to go, oops, just a little too light, then we could take the original chromatic black, make it thinner, and then just go over this to glaze it. Okay. And I'm going to go to the very edge, because I know that I'm going to be glazing it dark on the edges so the painting fades into the frame. So I might as well get this in here now. And these little paintings are a great way to do something not so quite mixed media, not so fast like a painting study, but just something that's a little bit different where you can combine a bunch of different techniques. That's why with a lot of the classes now I'm going to talk because this is going to be a bit. That's why with a lot of the formal classes now, I'm including a lot more painting studies and linking them up, because that way there's extra help there if you need it. So although, you know, if I do, let's say 10 classes of a cat, I will do a painting study for each one, even though it may overlap and you know, be this similar as another painting study. Things are always different. Cat has a different position. Cat has chasing a mouse, going into a house. How does that nursery rhyme go? The cat ate a mouse, the mouse ate cheese, the cheese. No, I don't know. Guess what? We have a power failure. Uh-oh. Okay, I'll be back in a bit. It's back. I swear that this project is not meant to be. Power was out for almost an hour. So the good thing the batteries on the cameras stayed on because it was all set for lighting and stuff. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, there's the heat gun burned a bit of the piece. All right, so I am gonna have to use black for the line around the edge, just the smallest amount of black because I want to get that hard outline. So now I'm gonna go. Oh, I hope you guys can see this. This is just around the eye. We're going to build the one at the top a little bit deeper. We also have to build a shadow. I have a terrible glare. Okay, the one on the bottom is the one that's important. Okay, so I'm just going to be putting on the inside of the eye. It's a little bit too transparent there. Going with the black for the opacity. Thinner here. A little bit thicker, 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 thicker. Okay, and that's really all we needed for now. I'm going to, oh, you know what, it didn't, no, I think I'm going to have to, too transparent there. You need dark to show light, and this is what we need for that, the wet part of the eye. And actually you can use chromatic black, it doesn't have to be that black. For sienna, ultramarine blue. A little bit of water. Just gonna make that a little bit darker. I'm gonna put some highlights in there. No, I'm basically touching up what I didn't touch up when the power went out. So remember that the lid, although it's going to receive light, we need to make sure that it has that hard edge because it is hard. The eyelid doesn't blend into a background or anything. There is an edge on the lid covering the eyeball. I might as well take a little bit of that black. It'll really make the highlight stick out. And if you have trouble with your paint, it's just not, your paint's not flowing, or a lot of brush drag, wet your surface, wet your painting with a little bit of water. That'll help the flow. I'm going to demonstrate that when it comes to doing the white highlights. I'm going to go to a, whoops, smaller brush. Or a bigger brush. And really the only thing I need to do on the outside edge is to paint that even darker when we get time to glazing. I'm going to take that, do we have anything that's left? Nope. Okay, so I'm going to make a turquoise color again. We need to deepen it. We can't just make it dark. We need to deepen it. So I'm going to, let's see. Oh, okay, you either can get some orange. Let me try with a bit of burnt sienna in that. Yeah, that's not bad. A little bit of water. And I just want to put, nope, I'm going to take a little bit of black in there. Just want to get, that's perfect. So I'm just going to deepen the shadow here. Yeah, similar technique to what we were doing before. Deepening that a lot. And a tiny little bristle brush would be perfect for this. I do have. They're hard to find, so that's why I don't use them a lot, because, you know, there's no point in me using supplies that you wouldn't even be able to get access to. Look at that deep shadow. Isn't that nice? But dry brushing with a synthetic is a bit rougher on the brush. So if you understand that, then go ahead. Or if you're okay with that, go ahead. Perfect, like that. Okay. And while I have that color, what happens if I get a white? That's too. No, I'm not even going to take a chance. I was thinking about just tinting the highlight a little bit more. I'm going to go right into white. Bring a little bit of that color in there. So a little bit of that shadow color, and just add it to a little bit of white. And let's come in. And you're going to make these lines very broken, so they look wet. Don't make it a solid line. It just won't make any sense. And now let's put some highlight. And I want those to be a bit heavier. As soon as you put the highlight in there, it looks amazing. Nice. Usually I like to reserve the highlight to the end because I haven't finished painting it yet. All right, let's go into, well, let's lighten this value up a bit. Where's my chromatic black? Let me lighten that value up a lot so we can get some more details in there. So then I can show you how to do some glazing. Is that going to be the right color? Nope, that's too close. Lighten it up a bit more. Want a little bit more blue. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to start here. This is going to be very tedious. I'm not going to go to the very edge, but basically I want some really deep, bright, intense highlights in order to glaze. Now, one thing I was saying to you before, if you have trouble getting the paint to go, let me demonstrate it here. You can wet the painting, not sopping wet. Wet the painting. And then let it evaporate a little bit. Come in with your paint. And then you can make your strokes, and the paint it's much smoother and there's no drag. Keep in mind that if the surface is too wet, the paint is just going to spread out. That's why you just want the painting to be damp. You can do this with the glazing, the extender and blending medium as well. You can do it with matte medium. Problem with matte medium, it dries really fast, so it'll get tacky. This gives you a nice soft finish to it. But you want these highlights to be bright enough so when we glaze, you're going to still see the stroke, but it'll be a little bit darker. And now see it's drying and the brush is starting to drag. It's a bit easier with a flat brush. I'll do the same thing here. See, this is too much water. And as well, I went into the eye, so the white, if it was too much water, the white will actually go in. So you can think of it like watercolors as well. You can just pat a little bit, paper towel. Then I'm going to come in here. It's a really nice technique. You don't need those fancy brushes. So I can see where I did pad with the paper towel where it was a bit drier because the strokes are much brighter. Okay, so it's starting to dry out now. See how far I can go. I'm painting right underneath the frame here. Let's see how far I can go. Yep, got drag now. Take the brush again. This is with experience. You'll know it's with experience to how the right, the way that the brush will make those strokes. My mouth is rented since the power failure. You'll know the feeling when you make the stroke. It'll just feel right. It's just judging how much water to put down. And that just takes practice. And it's different based on different substrates. Oh, this is nice. Okay, I have to do this part here. And I always like making my strokes in the direction that I'd be painting. That way, the water will also, the paint will also flow in the same direction. Not wet enough. Not quite enough. Now it's the paint that's actually thinning down. Okay, so I made it quite bright here, so I'm going to show you how to, well, mind you can just wipe it down, but I'm going to show you how to glaze over that. So that'll be a good opportunity. I'm going to make this really bright. There we are. So using a flat brush would also work if you're working with a bigger piece. Because we have so many sections here, I'm going to just stick with the small filbert to wet the surface. I'm just making this even brighter to show the glazing. I'm going to show how you get with the dark and then work it in. And the more layers that you do with this technique, the fur stroke technique, the nicer it's going to be. Don't feel you only have to do one or two layers and leave it at that. The more you do, the better. Just take a break in between. And you may have your own method of painting animal fur. That's fine. Just give the glazing technique a try. It doesn't hurt. It's always nice to try many techniques to learn. The paint is drying now and the brush is just dragging. See? All right, so the frame is coming up right to where that edge is. I want to make it a bit more, I want to make it a little bit brighter here. It's always light here. You may also have your favorite brush. You may not like using a round brush. That's fine too. But if you've never done animal fur with round brush, just try it. It's always that touch, push, lift. So now I'm going to go back up here. Whoops. Whoops. We want to really see the glazing with this one. Make sure your ending strokes are always uneven. There, should be able to really see the glazing on that. Because if it's too dark, you won't see it. The idea is to paint this really light, then use the glazing technique to darken certain areas. I think we're pretty well set. Okay. This has to be 100% dry. Now let me just take a look at something else I can work on while we're waiting. I'm going to make some more of that chromatic black. And I'm just going to, whoops, that's too brown. Holy moly. There we go. Just getting that edge a little bit better. I did the shadow here, and now it's dried. So I'm just dry brushing another little bit of a shadow. How much you shadow is completely up to you, but I like using that pouncing technique and scribbling because I get the modeling in there. And if you're worried about if you're not sure to put a layer of matte medium to make that barrier layer, so it'll be easier to wipe back. There we go. I love that. Okay, let me just quickly dry this. That is absolutely beautiful. I'm going to go with a clean brush now. Okay, so for the glaze, it's up to you what you want to use for a glaze. I'm just going to stick with the ultramarine blue and transparent red iron oxide. How about a bit more than that, Gisele? More on the blue side. Burnt sienna is opaque, so that's more opaque. This one is opaque. If I use the Deco Media Fluid acrylics, it's semi-transparent. And I need a little bit of blending medium in that. I don't want water because if it dries right away, the blending medium, at least I can wipe it back. Okay, so watch. Right at the end. You see, I'm not losing those brush strokes because the paint is transparent. If the paint was opaque, I'd lose everything. Okay. I want to let that dry before I do anything else with it. And I'm going out in because as I go from out, go in, it's like a touch, push, lift. That's why I'm getting those nice soft edges. And that should stay wet enough for, that should stay wet for maybe about, 5-10 minutes to give me a chance to have this dry. See? And I can just go a little bit deeper. Keep that ever so soft. not going into the eye. This takes practice. Very little here because I want this to be lighter. Okay, so let me dry this. It's dried now. And basically I can glaze it some more in that. And I'm thinking, although I was working with this from a photograph of, an actual photograph of a panther, what if you want to make an adjustment to the pupil? What if you want to change the size? The pupil is easy enough because you can make it much, much bigger. You'd have to go really, really black with this. To change the actual shape, I covered that in one of the painting studies about changing the shape of stuff like this. So before you decide that you want to do stuff like that, let the painting sit for a day. The painting fairy will come and fix it overnight. But usually you become too critical and stuff like that. So let it sit. As well now, if you think the highlights are too bright, the darkness is too dark, whatever, if you're thinking of doing something drastic, just wait. Okay, just hold on and wait. Because when it gets to the details, sometimes you look for stuff to tweak when it doesn't need it. So it's dried. You can see what it looks like now. I've got little bits of dried paint in here. This shouldn't show up in the frame. And I need to darken this a little bit more. So I'll just go back with the same brush. And I'll do the same thing. Come in here. This is a little bit green. So I'm going to go into the burnt sienna. You can always go to a Prussian blue. I'm going to take a little bit of black in there. There we go. I want a little bit more opacity on the outside. Because remember, I want the outside of the painting to almost fade into the frame. If you don't have blending medium, no worries. Just dampen it with a little bit of water. You just do small sections though, so it doesn't, you know, go off and dry on you. So what I'm creating is almost like a vignette. Well, not almost like a vignette, it's a vignette. The edges just fade into the background. Okay, but see that highlight there? It's too defined. So I'm going to take the brush on this chisel edge and I'll work that a little bit down into that highlight. Because I can always put the highlight back by putting more paint out in there. I'm loving this. And I'll take a little bit more on the corner, go into a little bit of carbon black, and for the opacity in the corners. Whoops. I want this to be very, very, like I said, I want it to be super dark. Okay. Now I'm going to go to a smaller brush and I'm going to bring that in there, blot, take the brush, go back where the highlight is, blot. And what I'm doing now is I'm kind of wiping back some of that glaze. And if it's dry, just wet the brush and you might be able to, yeah, there we go. Just to remove some of that. If the paint is tacky, you got to stop. You got to leave it. And up here, it's starting to get tacky. Those bubbles bug me. Oh my goodness. But here we're good here. And I can come in, I can take a little bit more paint and I want to just punch up that highlight a little bit more. Not too much. That's gorgeous. And take some of that. Just go back and shadow even a little bit more. Go into the chromatic or the actual carbon black to find that edge. And I'm going to take some of that chromatic black where I accidentally put some first stroke into the lid. Trim that up a little bit. There we go. That's pretty cool. There we are. So I'm going to dry this. And I'm not going to varnish it on camera because varnishing always takes away from the photography. But I'm going to dry it and then I'll pop it in the frame. Silly me, can't put it in the frame yet. I'm not finished. Okay, so let's try this again. Where's my little brush? Where's my little brush? I take the small brush. I could do the whole painting with this little brush. I'm going to take a little bit of white, a speck of yellow, a little bit of green, and we're trying to get a lighter, much lighter blue, but I really need to make it transparent. So because I can't make it truly transparent, I'm going to dry brush it. So just taking that, it's almost like the mix that was there before, and just add a little bit of white to it. Again, this is really rough on the brush. So this particular brush is fine when I'm doing the dry brushing. Just adding a little bit of a lightness there. Oh, I see a line there. Well, you know how I can fix that? And glaze it. Glaze it, glaze it, glaze it. Some more green. And wipe the brush. And come back and just put a little bit of that glaze over. You know what I should come up with? A DIY version of a mini scrubby brush. The light color under there creates those, because it was rough. So then when I glaze over it, I still see the underlying color, similar to what we did here. So I have a bit more, some more striations in there. And can take some of that dark as well, and I can just come in and do a little bit of pouncing in here for those striations. In these studies I was using a liner and squiggling. That's pretty good. Now while we're here, take that white and I'm just going to add just a few light, too far in. Just want to get that on the very end. Get a bit of water. Oh. Just little bits. This is where the lid or the lower, where the inner lid comes out and what turns into the skin and the fur, where it kind of comes out like this, and that's what we're painting here. Very, very little. I have to come back with a little bit of black here. My brush is a little bit big for what I'm doing here. But we know how to, if we put too much, what do? Just glaze right back over it. It's actually just not too bad. Just got to get the right moisture in the brush. That's the whole thing. I'm actually wondering if the power is going to go back off. I have never been in a place that has such bad power. Well, it's worse in the city. There we go. Look at that. Let me just put a little bit here to form this corner. Like that. And dry brush, swoop that. That turned out perfectly. And I'm gonna go in now with that liner brush with a bit of water. Too much water. There we go. Let me just put a little bit more paint in there. Make sure that line is broken though. And at this point now, I mean, it's just a matter of just adjusting, you know, only you'll know how you have to tweak this. Only you'll know. Let's put a bit of a darker color in here. I mean, I can, usually when I'm working on a pet portrait or even a wildlife portrait, it's usually a couple days. So this is actually quite fast, and I don't recommend you do it this fast if you're doing it as a, you know, commission or something like that. Take your time. Deepening that shadow. And then when we come in here and to varnish at the end, I'm going to varnish lightly with a satin varnish. I mean, you can build that up and just keep going and going and going. To paint the light striations in the eye, you can take a little bit of white, similar to what's there, and you can we use the liner brush in the painting studies. You can use the same brush for fur. Just make sure you wipe back. You just want to get a few strokes in there. Okay. Right around the pupil. I want to do a little bit more here though. So I'm thinking the liner, I should have did these striations with the liner brush. You're just getting those squiggles in there. Mind you, I like using my finger too. Just don't put too much with the white because the white is opaque. But you can always come back with glaze, right? See? I love that those little lines around the eye. Those little circles. And I don't know if I have enough color left. That's dry, we can glaze. And you'll be left with those beautiful marks that you just did, but they won't be so opaque. There we go. Look at that. So that's it. You adjust the way you want. Make it as deep as you want. You know, one thing I didn't do, I didn't add a bit more yellow. Let's put a little bit of yellow in here. I love that hit of yellow. Love that. So again, up to you how far you want to take this, up to you, the color that you want to make this. It's up to you. You know, if you want, you know, the brushes you use, just experiment, experiment, experiment. Use the painting studies to experiment though, but try to avoid just sticking to the painting studies and not actually doing an actual, like a formal painting. Just make sure you get to try some different things. So I'm just going to deepen up this corner because the corner of the eye, right in the corner, is usually wet. Put a little bit of a reflection there. I'm going to punch up that highlight because I don't like how weak it is. Try not to cover the, try to cover the puppy. Come back in with white here. There we go. Voila. Now let me quickly just dry this. How's that? Hopefully you can see that okay. Hopefully it's not too... In the monitor over here it looks a little bit darker, and on the camera monitor it looks a little bit light, so I'm not quite sure. But that's adorable. That is actually adorable. But now because it's in a black frame, I think when I'm looking at it this way, I'm thinking I might want to put a little bit more highlight in here. I'm going to wait a day though. I'm going to put it up on the wall, see what it looks like. I'm probably going to give this away. I like paying it forward. To thank people for spending time with me. I like to... I'm done with the commissions. I've done the selling. I'm so past that. I don't need to make any more money off selling my art. You know how I make money from not selling my art? Stress. No stress. That's not to say you shouldn't sell your art, but I've been doing it for so long. Now I want to paint to teach and to have fun. What was I talking about? Oh yeah. So let this sit, and then coming back, because this frame is so deep, this is a frame that Joe made, and going to come in, and I shouldn't be doing this now. Shouldn't be doing this now. I'm trying to get so you can see. Can you see? You can't even see. Oh my God, I'm sorry. You can't even see. Anyways, yeah, so just paint a few of those hairs. Just getting that in there. You could touch it up, punch it up. Can you see? Oh, you can't see again. Oh, you know what? How much of this was I doing where you couldn't see? Oh my goodness. So just a few of those lines there. See, just punching that up. Hope the frame isn't in the paint. You can't see again. Why have I got a funny feeling most of the project I just did was without, you guys won't be able to see. Oh, I will be so sad. If that's the case, then I'm just going to give this away because I'm not filming this a third time. Not happening. Also smudge some paint there. All my mind is on right now is if the power is going to go out again because the lights flickered across the street. Oh, you know what else you have to do? Sign your piece. Don't forget to sign it. Sign it in the complimentary color. So I would use something like this. Sign it right there. And usually I just sign my name. Well, for something small with the letter G. That is gorgeous. I love that. So I'll do the photography first. Falling off my chair. I'm going to do the photography first. And then I will come in and I will do a satin varnish on it. You could, if you wanted to, do a gloss varnish inside the eye because it's wet. You could do a gloss varnish and that's completely up to you. But this turned out super nice. So take your time. I'm limited on time. So take your time and do it over a couple of days. My hands are super sore. So experiment with doing a collage instead of image transfer. Work with your brushes, work with it, different techniques. If I'm showing you something you've never done before, try it. You don't even have to do as a formal painting. Use this as an opportunity of doing another painting study, so just to practice it out. But remember, whatever you're doing, and as you're mastering it, try to get a formal painting done, even if it's just in an art journal, to keep a record of what you're learning. All right. So, yeah, I really like that. Yeah, I'm going to punch up that highlight just a little bit more, but I'm going to wait overnight to see if the painting fairy will come and fix it for me. And see if she can do it for me, because I have so much of a mess to clean. And now I have to go and reset all the clocks. That's going to be so much fun. Alrighty, you guys. So thank you for sticking with me. This project was a little bit longer, well, a lot longer than I was hoping, but I don't want to rush through things. So I want you guys to pick up on the techniques and learn. Thank you so much for being with me. Let me know in the comments below what you had trouble with the painting, because I can always try to create a little additional studies for certain elements, and I'm here to help you. All right, so let me know what you think. Post your pictures. I love to see your pictures. I'm going to clean up, go reset my clocks, and I'm calling it quits for the day. All right, so I will see you in the next lesson. Until then, stay inspired.